Anyway, speaking of the dogwood tree or the wildwood weed or whatever it is that's going on at AEW, a collision has been rightly named with the amount of potatoes, the amount of taters, as we used to say in the locker room, that are being thrown around. The whole crew hails from Boise, Idaho. See, this is hilarious shit to anybody in the wrestling business over 55 years of age. And we're gonna talk about as we go through the
Over the age of 55 in the wrestling business, or as it's known, the average age of dead.
well, there you go. See, all the good stuff is gone. Stamp collecting, wrestling terminology, it's all gone. I walked in the locker room when I was managing Mike Boyette. He was Apocalypse, the soldier of fortune, right?
Yeah, of course.
In Memphis. And poor Mike, he was the nicest, great guy, but he was all fucked up in a variety of ways. And you could just look in his eyes, right? And he had come in and he's doing the soldier of fortune. He's wearing the camouflage and the face paint like he's out in the jungles of wherever, Bolivia. And he was wearing combat boots. He's doing martial arts shit, which come to find out I believe he was a heck of a judo guy in the 60s in his youth, but I don't think they kick in judo. But the point is, he's trying to kick these guys with these combat boots, right? With varying degrees of success. So one night I come in the locker room and there he is, and he's already got his face painted up, and he's got his head thing on, he's got his camouflage pants on and everything, and he's barefoot, and he's taping up his feet, right? Like the ball of his foot. Sometimes barefoot wrestlers will put a little tape on, whatever. I said, Mike, did you hurt yourself? He said, no, I'm wrestling barefoot from now on. I said, why's that? He said, they made me take my boots off. They said they were made out of potatoes. But see, it was funnier if you're over 55. Nevertheless, so
they said they made me. They said,
yeah, they. Well, they actually. At the time, it was Dundee. I think and/or Jerry Jarrett. But it was a consensus of the babyface locker room, apparently. Anyway, we were going to talk about collision, people colliding with each other with drastic results. What do you think of the new 3-man announcing booth there on Collision on Saturday nights, where we had some semblance of normalcy for a little while? Now it's Tony Schiavone, Kevin Kelly, and Robin Leach. He's screaming and he doesn't know why.
That is what he sounds like.
Because and now Tony's trying to lead or be, not trying. They have him as apparently the lead announcer.
In the way that David Crockett was the lead announcer on TBS.
Well, no, he wasn't. See, it was always,
that's my point.
Always viewed as the sidekick.
But that's the way Tony does commentary.
Well, but the problem is now with all three of them, Nigel is, as you mentioned to me, I don't know if it was on tape or just on the phone. Nigel's trying hard because he's trying to do his job and salvage shit. And, Tony has a little slower cadence than Kevin does. And Kevin's trying not to interrupt Tony. So then he kind of just spits something in the middle there, and then we go on, and it's, I don't know.
Yeah, they cut Kevin Kelly's nuts off because the first couple of weeks of Collision, which was a good show, he was amazing on commentary. And now it's like he's on NyQuil. He's sitting there and it's like Kevin Kelly actually on WWF TV in the late 90s. He barely gets a word in. When he does, you're like, oh yeah, Kevin Kelly's there. And then all of a sudden it's fawning Tony Schiavone, who says nothing of any importance and just yells. And then his yelling, exciting friend, look at the yacht! Look at this yacht!
He's in his luxurious swimming pool.
That is what it's saying. That Kevin Kelly's he left New Japan for this? This is what he left New Japan for?
Well, no, I think, to be fair, he left New Japan, I think, just to be able to spend more time with his family as he increasingly ages on his way to, rotting in the ground as we all do. You can't do that.
One of the listeners sent me something where apparently Schiavone said that he went to Tony Khan and asked if he could do lead commentary on Rampage. And instead, Tony Khan made him the lead commentator on Collision.
Well, it's hard to tell those two shows apart anymore, except one's a little longer. But let's talk about the one that's longer, because we're going to get to a few profundities, hopefully, here in the course of the analysis. And analyzing, the first thing that we saw coming out of the gate was the Bang Gang Clangers entrance. And my God, I don't know that we pushed Steve Austin in the 90s like they are pushing these fucking guys, but it's a group of people that is focused on probably the least charismatic one of the bunch, and he's the one that's wrestling a single match. Good old Switchblade Jay White. And his opponent was summoned by you, Brian, like Beetlejuice. Think about it. When is the last time we heard this guy's name, A.R. Fox, and you mentioned it on last week's program? Where'd he go? And he's back.
I don't even know if that program has been released yet, so people have to take your word for it. But yeah, he was a baby face that you can kind of root for. He kind of looked like he was from the set of Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo, like he could dance. You know what he does too? He does the one thing he does that looks horrible. He claps his hands in front of him whenever he does like a kick or anything. Like instead of slapping his thigh, he'll clap his hands in front of him.
Here, look how good my rhythm is. I can clap my hands at the same time I kick the guy.
Well, he was a great babyface, and then he turned heel and became just a vicious thug.
Just a backstabbing, home-invading motherfucker.
And then Swerve turned on him. Kind of like the name Swerve, you would think maybe I shouldn't trust this guy.
It's like having a fucking lawyer named Cheatham.
He cheated him, and then he had nowhere else to go, so he came back hat in hand to Darby and Nick Wayne.
Apologized. He apologized. I'm sorry you nearly bled out because of something I was involved in.
Then he was kind of like almost accepted, and then he disappeared, and then Nick Wayne turned, and now A.R. Fox is back.
So now is A.R. Fox justified? Wait a minute, who did he turn on now? Wait, A.R. Fox is justified because he knew ahead of everybody what a piece of shit turncoat backstabber Nick Wayne was.
But he was only doing it to upset Darby, right? He wasn't doing it, like Nick Wayne was just, what's the word I'm looking for?
A pawn in the game?
Well, yeah, Nick Wayne was just collateral damage.
Collateral damage. You know what they ought to do? They ought to, like the kids these days, they ought to do a Facebook, fucking group or thing or whatever on everybody's personal drama. Here's what Darby said to me in 2018 that led me to smash him with a goddamn blunt instrument in 2022. He insulted my cooking or whatever the fuck. And all the childish high school reasons why all these people are mad at each other and keep stabbing each other in the back to where you can't fucking trust any motherfucker. We ought to have some kind of, like one of those, you got a neighborhood thing up there, right? You got a neighborhood thing on the internet where they keep everybody apprised. Aunt Joe over here down the street just had her fucking 14th hysterectomy or whatever. So we send good luck to her.
Mrs. Princenthal saw a bear, make him up the street. Be careful.
There you go. Yeah. Well, they ought to have that for AEW where we could, instead of trying to remember this shit because it's inexplicable, we should be able to go back and look at all the nasty things they've said to each other and why they're mad.
But that is kind of the drama they try to put on their show. It's all about friendships ending because of endless childish behavior. I'm not exactly sure why. Everyone's friends for no good reason, but then the friendships end for no good reason. So there's no good reason for any of it.
Well, speaking of no good reason for anything, let's get back to Jay White and A.R. Fox.
Oh, yeah.
Once again, it took everything that the number one contender to the World Heavyweight Championship could do to beat this 185-pound nobody that we never see and that has turned on every friend he's ever had to the point where people can't trust him at all in 15 minutes.
Didn't they say, too, A.R. Fox was a hometown kid, or he was from Connecticut?
I didn't see massive banners or anything. Welcome wagon. Was the Chamber of Commerce there?
I thought they said that on commentary, but then I'm like, you said his gym was in Atlanta, and he's mugging people in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was a long match.
Maybe he's one of those expatriates. Maybe they excommunicated him. Anyway, the point of the deal was, as Jay White and his Bang Clang Bangers are celebrating in the ring that they beat this guy. MJF, dressed all in black with a hoodie that he, flips down to last moment, runs to the ring and tries to steal his belt back and gets his hands on it and gets caught, and they jerk it away from him, and he runs back out through the crowd. So the world champion did a run-in to fail, and it's not like now that they, oh my God, I can't believe that the Gangbang Clang actually snatched the belt back from MJF. There's no heat in that. It's that they stole it is the heat that the champion comes out and tries and fails once he's got his hands on it to get the fucking thing back. Well, now it's like, well, fuck. Do you see what I'm saying? Yes, he wants to get it back. They're about to have a match, apparently, we think, according to these convoluted, clouded fucking promos where they're challenging, asked, and answered 3 or 4 matches in the same fucking breath. So why would you have him try to steal it when he's got a match coming up where he could get it back? Or if he's going to try and steal it, let him steal it. And then somebody can beat him in the 8-man tag and steal it back if it's that big of a deal to you. Or whatever the fuck. But what was this?
The booking for all of this has been questionable for a while. I think in one way it was good because this is what heel MJF would do. He would sneak to the ring and try to do something sneaky.
Yes, and heel MJF would have probably got away with it. Heel MJF would have got away with most of the shit that he's not getting away with anymore, and that's the problem.
I agree with that.
That's why he was over.
I agree with that.
He was getting away.
Although he's still over. He's still over, but it's different.
Okay, he's still over. Would he now be getting over doing this thing if we had never seen the other thing? Would he be getting over doing this thing like he got over doing the other thing?
No.
Boom goes the dynamite.
But what's the other thing? He would have gotten the belt and run away?
No, the whole heel run. Yes, MJF is over right now.
Yeah, but the babyface run is clearly not as good as the heel run. No one's questioning that.
Okay, that's the point I'm making, is that when you got a guy that got over doing that shit, and then you take away his ability to do all that shit, no, he doesn't need to win every time. He doesn't need to succeed he doesn't need to poke the guy in the eye every time. But still, most of the time, he's got to outsmart these fuckers because he's the devil. And then they can gang jump him and do something illegal, immoral, and unethical again. But you see what I'm saying? He's got to one-up these guys most of the time, and then they get to heat where it counts. Because if he's just outsmarted, outmaneuvered, he's the magician that can't make the fucking rabbit come out of the hat anymore.
I will say this, he should get a raise. He's in the middle of everything that matters on this show. Not just this show, but Dynamite too. It's all MJF.
If they really wanted to reward him, they'd give him a contract release.
Well, that would be a gift for him, but not for the company.
Well, you said he should be rewarded, given a raise. Well, anyway, so then immediately after that segment, the Acclaimed, in a backstage blah, 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 announced that next week they're going to be the champions for 69 days. And it's getting ridiculous now. So next week will be National 69 Day. And then Caster is apparently convinced that MJF has texted him, but Bowens and Billy Gunn are berating him because he's been catfished or whatever, and that's not the real MJF. And it's like children, and they make him stand in a corner while it's children. It's Billy Gunn's got to be laughing his fucking head off once he gets in the car at night. He's more over than he's been in 20 years. They're paying him, I'm sure, a fortune, and all he has to do is suffer through this bullshit. He's 60 years old. He's got to be dying fucking laughing.
You know, I hate to say it, but I'm starting to hate the Acclaimed. Maybe starting is a little late to the game now at this point, but they got over with the rapping to the ring and then doing stuff in the ring. Now they just do promos that are, like you said, childish. I mean, yeah, I get we could still make fun of the idea that 69 is a sexual number, like we're teenagers, but with the Acclaimed, it's always one thing after another. And now the idea that Max Caster is some like weird adult sex pest who doesn't understand boundaries or how to behave or how not to be catfished.
Caster was the cool rapper, right? That's what got the two of them over before Billy. Caster was the cool rapper that said wicked, sharp, cunning things in his raps, and then they did just enough in the ring.
Caster got the act over without any question. Yes.
And then, okay, when Billy comes, that adds an element of name value and experience and blah, blah, blah. But as we said, at that run, they had already, then the scissoring thing started. And yes, that's a cute thing, but they allowed it to get out of control to where that's the only thing they wanted to see out of the Acclaimed. And then when they had hurt Billy and he put his boots in the ring or whatever the fuck that time, we thought, okay, now they've seen, we got to make these two young baby faces more independent for the future for the next several years because Billy is, nearing the end of his career. And then he comes back and he's the hottest part of the fucking group. And now, as you said, I love the term from our friends in the UK, sex pest. But he's at some point, a naive child, and at other points, trying to hit on MJF or a single white male.
No, the other day there was some promo. I don't even remember if it was something we talked about where maybe it was on Dynamite. It was them being interviewed by Renee, maybe? Because, it would either be her or Lexi. And he made some kind of inappropriate comment, and the other two, pushed him away and chided him.
Yeah.
This is now his gimmick. He can spit out some real sick shit on the mic, but he also doesn't know how to behave like an adult. That's his gimmick now.
So, to your point, yes, they are making it to where the Acclaimed are less likable for all the reasons that people liked them to begin with. And speaking of the Bang Bang Clang, who never left the ring, we come back and have another match with now the Gun Boys, who again are just sitting in the ring waiting, and here comes the boys, Dalton Castle's two henchmen, assistants, whatever they are.
His two boys.
And he does the entrance with them behind him, and then they get in the ring and get beat in 2 minutes. I'm like, what the fuck? And there you go with that.
What'd you think of the Guns hanging out in the ring while everything else was happening after, they were obviously just out there for the opening match, but they never came back. They just stayed out there for their match.
Well, yeah, it's almost like they don't want this group to even leave the arena. It's not like familiarity sometimes breeds contempt. Let's give people a little break between matches and promos involving. It's always a 20 or 30 minute continuous run-on deal with this group, and you get tired. And Juice is the one we see the least, and he's the most interesting. I was trying to watch the MJF and Twinkle Toes package, but I was apprehensive about what may possibly occur in the match, but we'll talk about that. Was there any thoughts you had on the package, or you want to wait till we get to the main event?
I mean, my biggest issue with Omega versus MJF has been the build or the lack of build, and it's been ridiculous to people that have tried to justify them doing it like this.
No, they gave it 3 days.
They gave it 3 days. This package,
and they teased it 10 days out when they had a snide comment to each other 10 whole days before the match.
So, I mean, I can't really say anything about the package other than it was good, and it probably should have aired on TV a week before the fucking match or something. Not like less than an hour before the match.
Come
on. Oh, I mean, seriously, they did it like, it's stupid that they called it a streak because it's not a streak, but, title versus streak or whatever it was. This should be a big fucking match. 3 days build.
Well, see, nobody
3 days build for the Mohegan Sun in Uncasville, Connecticut.
Nobody thought of it until they made a big deal about how long Roman Reigns had been a champion. Then they made a big deal about how long Gunther had been a champion. And then somebody in AEW, some numbers nerd, who in the world might have qualified for that description. Then, oh, wait, how long was Kenny the champion? How long's MJ? Well, we got 13 days, bitch. And there you go.
It's in Uncasville, Connecticut. Do you think Unca Dave will give it 5 stars?
It reminds me of when we did local promos when I first got to the WWF for Ithaca, New York. And I said, Ithaca? So that sounds like the noise you make right before you throw up. And I had people years later coming, I remember you said that about it. But we'll talk more about the build or lack or none or whatever of this thing when we get to it. But do you believe that whatever they're going to do with Danhausen may be the worst, most amateurish thing that they've ever done?
You want vignettes to introduce people so that something makes sense, even if it's a bad gimmick that you're going to hate, like Skinner. I always bring up Skinner. Even if it's that, you want some explanation. Danhausen's already been there randomly, just popped up at various points. If you knew, you knew. If you didn't, you really didn't. And then he was gone because he got injured. I don't even know if he ever wrestled a match. He got injured. And then now they're doing these videos that have nothing to do with wrestling. So if you don't know him, you still don't know what the hell it is. And if you know him, you're like, oh, wow, they're doing these really cool videos. Where's it going to go? Where it should go is Turner should make him their Svengoolie on some other one of the Turner networks. That's where it could go. But however this is going to be utilized on AEW TV is frightening to think about.
Frightening. I see what you did there. Speaking of frightening, so there's Ryan Nemeth in the back, and he's talking about all his success in Hollywood and major motion pictures and sitcoms, baby. And now he feels like maybe I'd have more success in wrestling if I get a new manager. So he's standing outside what is alleged to be the office of Hot and Flexible and old CJ. And because it's got a sign on the door that somebody printed out on copy paper off a fucking computer printer. It says, what's her last name? CJ Perry?
CJ Perry, yeah.
CJ Perry, Hot and Flexible. In a black and white piece of copy paper on the door. So he goes and he knocks on the door and the door opens and he's like, I was going to see CJ. Come in. And it's Miro. And as soon as they open the door and Nemeth walks in, you can see that it's a room they've got set up for pre-tapes. There's actual lighting and an interview background in the shot in this room. And otherwise, and then, of course, the door closes and Miro kicks the shit out of this idiot. And while they're making fake ARG noises. But they couldn't even not shoot the fact that it's not an office or anything, or I don't know what the fuck. Why does everything have to be so ridiculously over the top fake to where you just fart at it?
This was SmackDown a few years ago. This is an old Raw segment. The idea that they shot his face so that the door opens, you can't see who's there. All the cameraman had to do was move the camera a little bit over. But he doesn't do that. And that's WWE
He could have moved
shit.
it over the other way when they showed the goddamn interview set that he's walking into inside the room.
But
they didn't do that either.
This is bad. And when you hear all the stories about Miro not wanting to do things that Tony Khan wanted him to do in the past, and you can't blame anyone for not wanting to do some of Tony Khan's bonehead ideas. But beyond that, if these are the things that he wants to do, why? Like, he was making progress again, and now again, it's this whole thing where his wife is either going to manage or all the job guys want her to manage them. None of the main eventers, the job guys. And then Miro beats them up. Either get a marriage counselor or do something else. What is this?
And certainly she's working when people have sent the comments in on Twitter, whatever, that she wants to be the greatest manager of all time. Well,
I want her to be too. That means something's going right.
Well, but you never know anymore because could she be one of the only ones that actually does interviews outside TV where she works her gimmick? Or does she actually believe that she might be able to do something like that? Because, I mean, they certainly can't make her a manager of anybody but Miro because she's not any good and she wouldn't be any good, would she?
No, that's the problem. She can only manage Miro or someone against Miro.
Against Miro.
That's it. That's it. So no.
All right.
But I mean, she's a good talker. For all the women that come into the business that can't talk, she can talk. She can't book, obviously, but she can talk.
We'll see. So then they had, because it's Halloween weekend, and why wouldn't they, a garbage match for the women's world title with Hikaru Shida and Abaddon, who dresses up as a frightful cross between, I don't know, a Bride of Frankenstein and a suppository. I don't know.
Abaddon.
She looks like.
Abaddon, who they keep off TV, it seems like, all year until it's Halloween.
Yes. And then they trick or treat us, and guess what? We didn't give them a treat, so they tricked us. Because it would have been bad with people that could work, because the ring was decorated for Halloween with pumpkins and a garbage can and styrofoam tombstones and various plethora of paraphernalia. But this was embarrassing. I skipped it first, but you mentioned something to me on another match, and I wanted to go back and take a look at it, and I stopped for a little bit of this, and my God, this shouldn't have been on cable access.
It was incredible.
What the fuck? I mean, okay, if Abaddon's, gimmick is Halloween, again, let her do interviews dressed up as Halloween. Who told this girl she could work? And
Kenny
Sheeta,
Omega. Kenny Omega, to answer your question.
Holy crap. No, that would be Sheeta, right?
Kenny Omega is the one who brought Abaddon into the women's division, I believe.
Oh, good Lord. All right. Well, this was, I mean, if anybody in the world didn't know wrestling was fake, then to watch this, there would be no doubt. It was just.
You know what? Sheeta, in the early days of AEW for that women's division, had some of the better matches in that division. That isn't to say those were great matches or anything. And there were a lot with smoke and mirrors, like her and Britt Baker, or whatever. But Sheeta's not good. It wasn't just because she was wrestling in an evening dress, or whatever was happening here. Because I just saw her on Dynamite, too, have a bad match. Right? Was it her and Ruby Soho on Dynamite?
Well, but again,
Sheeta's not very good either. Like, there are a lot of women in the division who aren't good, and Sheeta sometimes doesn't get listed in that group. Sheeta's not very good.
And by the way, the name you just mentioned, Britt Baker. Where the fuck is Britt Baker?
She's helping Adam probably after his surgery.
I didn't see her at Roddy's house.
That's a good point. Where was Britt Baker? Who was Britt Baker with?
Britt Baker has been gone for longer than Adam has been hurt, hadn't she? We haven't seen her in a while.
Hey, where's Jungle Boy?
He's in the jungle.
He's in that devil mask.
Watch out for that tree, motherfucker. I can't imagine they should ever bring him back after causing all that embarrassment and frustration and fucking the whole fucking deal that the whole world looked at him like they were complete idiots, all because of that fucking clown.
That's the thing. He caused that entire thing where Tony Khan ended up being afraid for his life. But the rumor is that, again, he's one of the people think maybe under the devil's mask, either Adam Cole, who can't wrestle for a while apparently, or Jungle Boy, who has been suspended for months
Who couldn't wrestle to begin with.
And boy, I mean, that would be a mistake, I think. They've tried so hard with Jungle Boy. They keep trying and to make him that character. But whatever. We'll see what happens.
All righty. Anyway, so we move on. Samoa Joe. He and Gunther, maybe the best heels in the business, had a squash match, but with Rhett Titus, who I haven't seen in ages. And Rhett looks better physically and can outwork 80% of the children on this roster, so we never see him. And then they bring him in to do 1 2-minute job to Joe, but Joe gave him a bit of offense from underneath because of, respect for him, but still got over. But again, We see Garcia and Useless and the Dork Order constantly. And you got a guy like Rhett Titus that you could have fed in, even if you didn't want to feature him, to put people over in a quality 8 or 10-minute match. And this is the first time we've seen him.
Hey, listen, Tony owns Ring of Honor. Rhett Titus has been a Ring of Honor wrestler / star for a number of years. Hate to say it, but a tag team with Kenny King, but he's done a lot of things there. Won titles there. He was treated like a jobber here.
Yeah, except by Joe. You can tell Joe didn't squash him like he did Johnny already in the ring. But
even like when they showed him in the ring and introduced him, here is Rhett Titus. He was just standing there with no charisma.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here to do a job. That was the problem.
You got 2 minutes, kid. But, it was good for what it was. But again, if Tony could see, Tony doesn't pick the talent. His fucking, minions that he's put in those positions picks the talent, apparently, because it's all their friends and they don't have eyes. They have hearts and they don't see, they fucking feel. And they think that a bunch of these jack-off, childish-looking fucking not ready for indie level players should have jobs on national television instead of guys that have been doing this for 15 years. Anyway, did you love the interview with QT and QT Girl and what's his face that we never hear from anymore? And John Morrison just standing there, a goddamn ex-WWE superstar and halfway name in the business, and he's just hanging out with QT. What the fuck? And QT's got a belt now. It looked like a fucking hubcap, but he's got a belt.
The AAA Mega Championship, was that it? Or it was one of the AAA championships, and he said he's going to now be trying to take down every luchador, because that's what we need on these shows. QT versus the lucha talent. Oh my God. That is what they said they're going to do. That is what they're going to do. QT versus the luchadors is a new AEW feud for the B-level shows.
Or maybe the C-level shows. Do they have a D-level anymore? All right, here's the big news that came out of this program. They had a pre-taped interview with Claudio. And he announced that Bryan Danielson has a broken orbital socket or orbital bone. And at first, when you heard this, because you had been deep in the editing mines, you hadn't been on the internet, he said, why would they say he's hurt immediately after he just came back from an injury? And apparently it's because it's real. And he's going to have some kind of surgery, and he's not going to wrestle at least through the rest of the year. And what they're trying to blame it on, and they showed a VTR, a B-roll over the interview, was that the fucking orange punch by Pockets, they actually tried to blame that as well. And when they showed the fucking clip, he whiffed him. He never hits anybody with that thing. And Claudio in his promo said whether it was the orange punch or the Rainmaker. Could it be that maybe this Japanese superstar that they brought in fucking landed on goddamn Danielson's face with that Rainmaker thing?
The Rainmaker's a clothesline.
Well, clothesline him across the face or land on it when they came down? I don't
know what happened. Okada is one of the best wrestlers in the world, and they were building up, apparently, the rumor is Okada versus Danielson at the Tokyo Dome January 4th. That's now out the window, more than likely because of Danielson's surgery. It was a match that we questioned the existence of on the show. And so many times that happens, and then someone comes out of it hurt. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. I guess in the amount of time Danielson's been signed to AEW, if it's like 700 days or whatever so far, just throw a number out there, how many days has it been on the DL?
Yes, and that's how the fuck. One of your biggest stars, a guy that's known for having a history of concussions and had to retire for a while because of it, a guy who then comes back, and I can't even remember the other injuries he had before the broken arm, because there was a couple more. And I'm not saying that Bryan Danielson, it looks that way, that he's injury prone, but how was he successfully able to wrestle a much tougher schedule for 15 or 20 years and not be injured this much because he was never in this fucking swimming pool with these other goddamn synchronized swimmers is what I'm guessing.
It's a style thing. It's a style thing. Danielson is considered by so many people to be one of the greats of this era. He's one of the stiff guys of this era. And now he's out of WWE. He can wrestle as stiff as he wants. This is what happens. When these guys want this style, this is what happens.
But what I was going to say a minute ago, regardless of the style, you've got one of the biggest names in the fucking company, and he's just come back from a broken arm, and you don't need any more goddamn injuries. How is he still getting injured? How are people not fucking taking care of him? What the fuck is going on here? It's not like unless he fell off the top rope head first to the floor, it's not like you can break your own orbital socket very easy. So what the fuck is going on here?
And remember, I said this to you in general about a lot of these guys when they come back and they're in their 40s, they get hurt a lot. I mean, how many times was Edge out after he returned to WWE? These guys are going to break down a lot, especially when they're working a style.
But a broken orbital socket is not breaking down.
Well, that's a very good point. That's true. That's true. That's true.
Not without help. I can understand if, ligaments, tendons, we all get older, the back, how many bumps in your bump card, your fucking face. Come on. Anyway. So the point is, he's hurt, and now as a result, Claudio, because they can't, I guess they don't want to blame Okada because he's not coming back or whatever. Who knows? But now Claudio is going to wrestle Pockets for the A&P company title this Wednesday at the Dynamite in Louisville. No wonder they haven't sold 3,000 tickets. So that's what we got to look forward to there. Now Danielson is out. Why doesn't anybody ever land on Pockets' face? How can he's almost 40.
He was out for a while too, remember?
Not long enough.
Maybe not long enough, but every one of their guys, other than MJF. Who else?
Who they were trying. They were trying.
Adam Page hasn't had a significant injury, I don't think, right? But Omega has. Both Bucks have. I don't know if Jericho has. Orange Cassidy has. Moxley, right now, Moxley has. Danielson has. Punk did. Did Cody get hurt and have to stop? I mean, he threw himself on the fire.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Every one of their top guys in the last few years has lost a significant period of time because of the stupid shit they're doing.
Well, but actually, it's probably more prevalent with the underneath guys because they come and go and are gone for so long anyway, you don't get used to seeing them. But
that's true.
What, Dante Martin?
And his brother. Both of them have been in and out. Yeah.
And, I mean, I can't even call all these names, but a lot of people have had surgeries or been hurt or been off or couldn't compete. Christian
Cage was out for a while.
They tried to cave Britt Baker's face in 2 or 3 times, didn't they?
That's right. And she's had at least a broken nose and at least that. But she's been hurt a few times, I think.
We could do this all day.
Jamie Hayter is currently the world champion. He's currently out of action. She's
Danhausen.
Danhausen I don't even know how he got hurt. He got hurt somehow. Darby, did you see the video? Now we got to talk about this real quick. So apparently Darby had a hurt shoulder and he went to some motorbike event. Did you see the video of this?
Oh, yes. No, it wasn't a motorbike. It was a tricycle. He fucking rode a tricycle down a goddamn like a 50-foot high ramp and then rolled off of it or whatever you do in a tricycle and did a backflip and face planted on the other side. And again, if I was Tony Khan's attorney, oh God, perish that thought. I just realized who I was talking about. If I was a competent attorney working for Tony Khan, then I would insert a clause in Mr. Allen's contract that said that if he injured himself to the point where he could not compete doing an outside wrestling activity not promoted by AEW, that he would immediately not get any more fucking money for the remainder of his contract. or until he came back and could wrestle.
That video's amazing because he says he already has a hurt shoulder and he's taking a break to do this from training for Mount Everest. And he rides this tricycle, as you say, down this ramp. And as he's in the air, you're like, oh, this is not going to end well. He lands right on the shoulder that he said he
Yeah. As a matter of fact, now that I think about it, they should insert a clause that says not only does he not get paid anymore, but he has to pay all the money he's already made back.
It's gonna be a great retirement. It's gonna be a great retirement tour for Sting. Darby knocked himself out of competition.
Where Sting will turn around. Where's Darby? He's stuck halfway down the mountain. He couldn't get here in time.
Hey, Danielson said in a promo a few months ago that he only saw one a good solid year left because of the promise he made to his daughter. How many of those months is he going to be on the injured list, do you think?
Oh, I just thought about that.
I mean, they're telling that story, right?
Yeah, he's counting the clock down for the last year of his full-time career, and they just sat on his fucking face. Well, you mentioned the plumber. Is he still hurt now or hurt again or been locked up, taken away, tied up, and held for ransom? What's his status?
Did you see I haven't read it yet, but a lot of people were posting quotes from it in the Cult of Cornette Facebook group and on Twitter. There's an article, here, I have it here, from your good friends, Jim, at The Messenger.
Don't shoot the messenger.
AEW's Jon Moxley calls for major industry change after suffering concussion in the ring. Exclusive. Moxley was injured during a match on AEW Dynamite last month, which sent him to, quote, fucking outer space for 10 minutes. And now he's proposing an idea how to better protect wrestlers, and this is by Daniel Traynor.
You know what? I got the first idea. If you are a wrestler that's been knocked into fucking outer space, don't go 10 more minutes.
Here's the question before we read any of this. Are Moxley's groundbreaking suggestions going to be the things that anyone would say who wasn't already doing this? Is he just like, now that he got knocked in the head, he's like, wow, I just realized what everyone else has been saying about how stupid everything we do is?
Well, of course, that's what it is. But also, if he wanted to make industry-wide change, he was probably in the place that he may have been able to do it. The one that leads the industry. But he couldn't hack it there, and he didn't like it. So he went to play with his friends, and now he ain't going to change shit because none of these guys are going to do anything that they don't want to do.
If I could make this time machine work backwards, I wish I could be in the room for Moxley pitching to Heyman and Brock Lesnar what he wanted to do. I would pay anything to be in the room to hear that conversation. But here's the article, once again, by Daniel Traynor, The Messenger. I don't know if he's the messenger or just writes for The Messenger. Jon Moxley was standing in front of more than 10,000 wrestling fans inside New York's Arthur Ashe Stadium, but he had absolutely no idea where he was. During Moxley's AEW International Championship defense against Rey Fenix at AEW Dynamite Grand Slam on September 20th, Moxley suffered a mild concussion at the start of their match. Moxley exclusively told The Messenger the concussion happened, quote, 30 seconds in, end quote, which ultimately sent him to, quote, fucking outer space for like 10 minutes. I just kept getting progressively more lost. I couldn't figure out where the fuck I was. Then, I had this moment of clarity. Oh, I'm fucked up. I gotta get the fuck out of here. So an in-ring audible was called to end the match early and give the title to
Small
Phoenix.
package, you fucking moron.
Not pile driver?
Small package the guy. Just small package the fucking, you're supposed to win. You're hurt. Here are your options. Small package the fucking guy, 1, 2, 3, and the doctor comes in, or the other guy picks you up over his fucking shoulder and drops you on your head again. Twice. Which one should you pick?
It is funny. I mean, you said just roll him up. He gave him a pile driver, then gave him a second pile driver.
Sunset flip, small package. Sunset flip. Good God, I've seen a motherfucker win a match that had a broken leg when he was supposed to win. I don't. All
Hey,
right.
Doc,
Okay.
if I ever get a concussion, what should I definitely not do if I'm not able to communicate or no one picks up on it? Just definitely don't do a pile driver, let alone 2 back to back. So an in-ring audible was called to end the match early and give the title to Phoenix. Moxley returned to action on AEW Collision last week, but even being out of action a month was difficult for him.
I'm a very physical person. I like wrestling for the sake of wrestling. I like to do shit with my body. So, sitting still and being injured is always very challenging.
Now fully in the clear.
I can't believe they put up with him up there as long as they did.
Now,
If he was talking like that around normal adult people in the business, I don't know how the fuck somebody didn't fucking go into business for themselves and just throw him out in the parking lot. Go ahead.
now fully in the clear, Moxley said the industry needs to adopt better safeguards to protect wrestlers in the ring.
In pro wrestling, it's a really touchy subject.
Moxley said, but acknowledged bluntly,
Somebody's gotta fucking bring it up. Pro wrestling is such a strange thing. In football, if a guy goes down and he doesn't go back to the huddle, you know he's fucked up. In pro wrestling, a lot of times it's hard to tell what's real and what's fake.
Not when you're in the ring.
moving forward, Moxley has a vision for a new system that he thinks might work.
Maybe a really experienced wrestler and a really experienced doctor who are trained to see signs of that shit are watching it on a separate feed. Even if they have a doctor close to ringside. What if the guy fucking spills outside the ring? He doesn't see that.
As Moxley articulates,
What the fuck?
both these
He does?
As
Is that what you call that? Articulating?
As Moxley articulates, these 2 hypothetical individuals would have no prior knowledge of what they were about to see.
The doctor and the wrestler are completely untethered to the creative portion of it.
Oh, good Lord.
They have no idea nor any interest in what the story is. Who wins? Who loses?
Who
how long
cares?
it's supposed to go.
What point is he making? So because they don't know what the guy's finish is, that means that they'll be able to better identify it when some motherfucker bashes another fucker's brains in? That anybody hasn't seen almost every fucking time these people are injured, that they're injured. Moxley, when he got fucking landed on by Felix the first time with the flip dive, got up and his legs were rubber and he went back down. And everybody could tell there. The referees are useless and feckless and dickless. And the fucking Felix comes from Luchador City, where they probably land on each other 15 times a night and concuss each other. Nobody even knows.
Didn't it happen
Nobody
to
knew
Danielson?
what the fuck was going on there.
Didn't it happen to Danielson once in WWE? He was wrestling a match on Raw, and they thought he was concussed, and I think he was. And like Triple H actually came out to stop the match.
Yes, I believe he did.
And he was angry about it. He wanted to keep wrestling. And they're like, no, we're going to stop this. There's none of that in AEW.
But here's the thing. Again, nobody knew what the viewers, the fans, the people watching television, the people in the arena, nobody knew what the finish was. They figured Moxley was going to keep the belt because why would you switch it? But nobody knew how long it was supposed to go, and nobody knew what the finish was. And nobody knew what...
Not even me.
Exactly, as it come to find out. But they didn't... When I say they didn't know what the finish was, they didn't know, okay, 3 drop kicks, 2 hip tosses, a body slam, whatever the fuck. So if Moxley got his bell rung and couldn't hardly get up, then at the start, then if he was feeling well enough to continue, he should have known at that point, let's not do this 15-minute match. This fucking guy just landed on my head and fucked me up. And we're going to do whatever the fuck in a small package. And then in the locker room, I'll tell him, well, you landed on my fucking head. And I didn't know what I was doing, so we just got out of it. Or he should have told the referee, because the referee's wired up to the goddamn back. He can hear Tony in the back at the gorilla position. And if Tony said, scratch your head if Moxley's okay, and the referee didn't scratch his head, or reverse, scratch your head if Moxley's hurt and he scratches his head, then Tony should have said, then tell him to fucking take it home. There's all kinds of things that could have gone on before it got to the point, including, as we mentioned when we talked about the match, that Moxley had just hit Felix with 2 or 3 big moves and covered him and got 2 counts, and then he just decides, wait a minute, I can't go on any longer. Beat me. What the no. Has anybody got any sense and experience at the same time in this situation? The answer we found out was no, none whatsoever.
I like how the Blackpool Combat Club are the biggest, baddest team. Their fucking leader fled. And then you can't hit any of them in the face or they're out of action for months at a time. Let me finish off this article here.
All right, go. Yeah, please finish it off.
Once again from the Messenger, watch out, Justin Barrasso. Looks like someone's moving in on your territory. Why does Moxley think a wrestler needs to be watching alongside the doctor, you might ask? He's got that answered too.
If a guy fucking spins around or something and the doctor goes, is he okay? The wrestler could tell him, that's just a pro wrestling thing. Don't worry.
Oh my God.
Moxley's proposed system would make things as cut and dry as possible, no matter what it means for the overall competition.
As soon as the doctor sees a sign of somebody being concussed, he just fucking hits the red button.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, no, I did that wrong.
He just hits the fucking red button. Boom. This is over. No matter how much time is left. No matter if it's on live TV. It's just over.
Why don't they give him a gong?
And you figure it out from there.
And you figure it out from there. You know what? Moxley's like the fucking Chick Donovan called a fucking spot one time with a guy. As he shot the guy off, he said, one tackle, drop down, you finish it. And the guy's running the ropes going, what? What? That's the same, yeah, and you figure it out from there. Sure, somebody's going to need to because you can't, you fucking pea-brain moron.
Oh my God, wait, we just have received word from Tony Khan. The red button has been pushed. Match is over. The match is over. Red button. The winner via red button.
A cone comes down over the rig, and then fog is shot into it as a decontamination. This guy's a simpleton. He's a simpleton, and he's got brain damage. You can tell. His brain has been damaged for the things he likes, the things he does, the things he says, whatever. But no, you don't need a doctor and a wrestler and a red button and a separate fucking feed.
And they know nothing about the booking. They can't know anything about what's going to happen.
And well, then in that case, how the fuck if they know what the finish is when a guy gets dropped on his head and is laying there selling, well, he's supposed to. Fucking morons for that matter. But besides that, I've been in the business for fucking 40 years. And every time that I can ever remember being on a show or doing commentary or being in a locker room, when somebody ever got fucking a concussion, they pretty much knew about it because the guy that got dropped on his head would say, hey, grab a hold, I'm fucking hurt. One time, Bobby Fulton, I remember this, the Fantastics against Ron Simmons and Butch Reed. Bobby got dropped or in some way landed on his head and finished the match, but then came in the locker room and didn't remember it. And then was freaking out because he couldn't remember finishing the match. But everybody around the ring has a part to play in it without putting extra people out there. The referee, both guys working with each other. You can see on the monitor if something really looked bad. That's why the X sign from the referees came into being, and then everybody got smart to it. And then they started working it to work the people, but the referee would tell the backstage gorilla position crew, yes, he's really fucked up. And they would send instructions to the referee of how to immediately get out of it. It's not, oh, well, we'll think about it and get back to you.
I have an update here. An article from Sports Illustrated just came up, SI.com, by Justin Barrasso. I bleed in the sunlight Jon Moxley proposes new system to help with blood in wrestling.
It's come to my attention that blading is wrong.
It certainly has come to his attention.
I've got a concussion, so now I have ideas how to fix the whole business.
In other words, no. Just have some people with some experience and some common sense and are looking for things. And to be honest, again, I am going to say that I did 5, 6 years. I did 300 one-hour OVW television programs that we aired here in Louisville over a 6-year period. And that was a wrestling school with the most inexperienced top-to-bottom crew that you would pretty much find doing anything on any television level anywhere. And I know we had concussions in training. I don't remember a concussion ever happening on the television program. And I don't remember ever having to stop one of the matches because anybody was hurt for real. Imagine that. And if you go back to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, where I did 200 one-hour television episodes of that, can you remember, you've seen most of those, was anybody ever hurt for real to where we had to stop the match or switch up what the fuck was going on? Just the fact that we're having to think this hard indicates it was rare.
Kanemaru kind of got hurt, but he asked for it.
Well, yeah, that was, and he did it to himself. So I'm talking about, an accidental goddamn injury that was unforeseen and,
Jericho breaking his arm, but no one was there, and that was before
he was practicing in the ring in an empty building and doing a flip that he didn't need to do that night.
Again, a lot of this comes down to style. And I'm not saying everyone has to wrestle like Big John Studd. I don't want that.
Yeah.
I like Bret Hart. Bret Hart was rarely ever injured for the majority of his career. And he wrestled good matches, physical matches. But look at what's happening now.
It's wrestling smart. It's not wrestling hard or soft. It's wrestling smart. Jerry Lawler had some of the most exciting matches over a 15-year period that was going on in wrestling, and had never had a major knee surgery, he had various injuries from taking some of those bumps, but never anything spinal, neck, broke his leg playing fucking football.
Yeah, he didn't even hurt it in wrestling, he hurt it in football.
Yeah. Never wore knee pads till he was past 40. And and was run over by cars.
For those of you who are young, quite literally, go Google Jerry Lawler hit by a car and you can see Eddie Gilbert run over him on live television in 1990.
Yes. And as we've told, we'll finish the story and then we'll move on. So many people called the Memphis police to say they'd just seen a vehicular homicide on live television that the cops came to Channel 5 and made Lawler go back out on the TV before the end of the show to say that he was alive and killed the angle. But anyway, so then we go back to Collision, where Ricky Starks with Big Bill took on our friend and former boy Dax Harwood with Cash Wheeler. Cash can work his ass off. Can they not spread these jobs around? Do they have to beat Dax every goddamn week? Has he ever won a singles match?
Against Cash.
Yeah, that's right.
Against Cash.
And that's the only one Cash has had.
Yep.
So between the two of them, they can't whip anybody. So the House of Blech was in the arena watching the match, and I'm not talking about in the back, I'm actually in the arena, up in the general admission section.
They weren't there until the lights went out.
Well, of course, the lights have to go out so they can appear and then come back on, but...
In the stands, I mean, it's one thing if they're coming out the entranceway, then you can at least make some sense. They're running by, the lighting guy knows what he's doing. They're in the stands. They're buying popcorn.
Yeah. And the thing is, these hot heels, this top heel group, not one fan heckling them, fucking with them, trying to speak to them. They're looking around them like, yeah, you're moving. You're blocking my view of the fucking ring. And they watched the match, and it was a good match because both these guys are professional in ways that most of the other people on the AEW roster are not. It wasn't a great match in that again, by the time that it was over with, they were hitting each other just back and forth with things. Can anything beat anybody? And finally, one of the worst looking things was the finish. But before that, you had me go back and look at the exchange of pile drivers.
Right, because when we first talked about this before, a couple days ago, before time travel, you had seen the second pile driver, but you had fast forwarded, inadvertently past the first one.
Well, no, I didn't fast. I was making notes and I looked down. I didn't see, because I was noting as he goes to pick him up for the pile driver. I guess I looked down at my pad and I heard, boom, he pile drived this. So I wrote, he pile drives him. And then 15 seconds later, Starks is up and giving his own pile driver. But I didn't see the form of Dax's pile driver.
What'd you think now that you've seen it?
Well, in all honesty, I would have rather taken that way than the one Starks gave him. And I will tell you why.
Yeah, explain.
If anybody wants to go back and look at the finish of this match, after they've done all this other stuff, Dax goes to give Starks a pile driver, and he puts Starks' head between his legs, and he grabs him around the middle, and he picks him up. When he picked him up, it looked, and I'm thinking either they wanted to do this way or Dax saved it, one or the other. Because what it looked like was Starks didn't know once he went up, how to take the pile driver. And I can't believe nobody's ever pile driven him before, but he, instead of keeping his head between Dax's legs, his thighs, and his hands on Dax's knees where he could post up and brace up, he just let go of the legs and his head came out, and Dax had him picked up completely upside down where his head was hanging and his feet were straight up in the air. But his head and his arms were dangling free. And when Dax jumped up, if you go back and look, again, I'm trying to dissect this without knowing whether this was a save or on purpose. But what Dax did was, when he jumped and he sat down, his legs were straight out underneath Starks' shoulders, and Starks tucked his chin so that basically, and threw his arms out to the side so that Starks' shoulders landed on Dax's thighs and knees, and Starks' head was not pointing straight down. His chin was tucked. So basically, Dax kind of power bombed him on his fucking legs. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was a save, but I wouldn't advocate for trying that free-handed all the time, because there's room for error.
It looked really bad. And I was surprised when they followed that up with another pile driver. That seems to be the thing in AEW. When you hurt someone with a pile driver, when it looks like you did, just do it again. Just do it again.
Yeah,
Someone else do it.
But in this instance, the guy that got pile driven and it looked like it hurt him, 15 seconds later was up after the distraction and gives Dax a pile driver and beats him with it. And that pile driver looked worse because, and I'll talk about this, some people can't give a pile driver. There's moves that even the greatest wrestler in the world can't do, always, all the time. And there's two other people that did shitty pile drivers, and I'm going to tell you who they were: Bobby Eaton and Ric Flair. You didn't want either one of those fucking guys to pile drive you. And the reason with Flair, I think it came from the back injury and the way that he learned to take bumps at the side. But have you ever seen Flair give a leg drop?
A leg drop, not a
leg drop.
Knee drop. A leg drop.
Leg drop. Have you ever seen Flair leap up in the air and land flat on his ass?
I can't think of ever seeing that, no.
Okay, well, you got to do that, or at least go flat on your ass even if you're not jumping, to give a pile driver. And Flair didn't do that. He would bend a leg or bend both legs every time he gave a pile driver. And he only did it when it was part of the angle. It wasn't like he did them in regular matches. That's why you see him very seldom.
By the way, he was also awful at taking pile drivers.
Well, yes, because again, potentially, maybe it was at his neck, back, whatever the fuck. But with Bobby, think about this, the guy with the greatest leg drop off the top that would land flat, right? But this went back to the days when he was a single in Memphis, and we used to talk about it in the car. He said, Corny, I can't do it. Every time Bobby tried to give somebody a pile driver, he would not be able to keep both his legs straight and land flat on his ass. He would bend, trying to think in my mind's eye, he would bend his right leg and he would go over to the side. He is like the gymnast that they get their confidence shaken and they don't know where they are oriented in the air, whatever they call that in the gymnastics world. It's sometimes, if even a great athlete, if he can't see something in his head or it's not natural to him to move a certain way, he can't do that move. And so Bobby would only do a pile driver when it was called for in the finish or an angle or whatever. But that's what Starks did. He bent at least one, if not both of his legs, instead of going down flat, and was going to the side. And since he still had Dax's head between his thighs, that's more dangerous when the legs are bent and you're not sure how you're going to land and the guy is going to the side with your head in between his legs. Now, does that make sense to you?
It does.
Well, there you go. But the finish didn't. So...
Hey, by the way, whatever happened, didn't the Young Bucks win a tag title shot?
Well, yeah, but who wants to see the Young Bucks against Ricky Starks and Big Bill?
I'm not saying anyone does, but I'm just talking about the actual booking. They won the tag title shot, and then FTR lost the belts, and now we haven't heard a word about the Young Bucks again.
Well, that's because they figured out what they wanted to do the next week. Anyway, it's not over because the lights went out. And then Julia Hart appeared in a spotlight wearing a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer nose.
Before you say that, earlier when the House of Black appeared in the stands, they said on commentary, either Shivani or Kevin Kelly, Julia's on the stage, but we never saw it. And then when they showed her again at this point later on, they kind of pretended like they never said that earlier.
Well, yeah, because they blew their surprise reveal, but why was she wearing a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer red nose? Was more prominent in my mind.
I don't know. I didn't notice that.
You didn't notice the big glowing fucking red glob on her nose when she's in the spotlight.
Now I can't tell if you're actually talking about a thing or if like she just had a pimple or something. I don't know.
It was a big glowing red something on her nose, a light of some kind. I'm not even.
Do you have a fever, sir? It was a glowing red light.
No, I'm not even trying to rib you.
I'm going back to the video right now.
Well, while you do that, I'll move on. That once she was in the spotlight and had her nose red, then she made a gesture and turned the lights out, and then the lights came back on, and the House of Black were in the ring, and all the heels turned around to stare at FTR. But then more music played, and out came, I can't pronounce the name of their faction, LaFuckers and Goobers, with Preston Vance. And they're back from their murder spree in Mexico we saw on video a couple months ago. And then they got in the ring and faced off with FTR, and now it's looking like it's fucking 11 against 2. But then LaFuckers and Goobers turned around and attacked all the heels. And they had a big sloppy fight all over the ring and ringside area where the stray floor camera revealed half the arena was empty. And then the heels left. Have you got to...
Yeah, it's the light. Whatever lighting setup they had there, the red light, I guess, came through her hat and hit her nose.
Came through her hat? What, have they got a fucking scope, a sniper scope on her?
I don't know. It's kind of what it looked like. It was the reflection of the red light. And now here comes La Facción Ingobernable.
LaFuckers and Goobers.
The fact that Preston Vance was leading the charge really kind of took it a step down. It should have been Roosh, the first one.
But you were calling that a charge?
Well,
more like a purposeful walk.
This is horrible. Again, it's just faction warfare with factions no one cares about.
So then they had a backstage interview with Andrade, who said something. I'm not sure exactly what. And then Chris Statlander now.
I believe he said, let me out of my contract.
That maybe I heard something to the words of I'll do anything. Statlander She's the adult in the room. She's trying to talk to Willow Nightingale and Blue Sky about settling their issues because there's tension. And then Willow and Blue Sky did some amateur night at the Improv stuff or other, just had some conversation.
Well, did you hear what they said? The problem apparently started after Julia blew the mist into Sky Blue's eyes, and now she's kind of more dark than she's been.
Yeah.
That's what we needed.
Yeah. We need dark blue sky. Well, you know what they say, red skies at night, sailor's delight, dark blue sky in the morning. You ain't going to get laid.
That's not what they say.
Well, somebody said it. And then Claudio beat somebody. That'll teach him to say that stuff. I didn't even get this guy's name. I'd never seen him before. And then Samoa Joe again set up the main event, telling MJF he will be at his beck and call. He'll be his friend as long as MJF gives him a return title shot. And MJF is not being accepted to this so far, or accepting, I should say. And then we got to our main event, Brian. And it was a long-awaited main event of the evening also, Brian, as we talked about earlier in the program. We waited for this bad boy for 13 whole days. Actually, we didn't really wait for it because we anticipated it for 13 days because all they did was make a veiled comment about 13 days to start it out.
Actually, to correct you, it turns out it goes back even further.
Oh?
MJF also whispered something into Kenny's ear on the Young Bucks program Being the Elite on YouTube, apparently. So they teased it there about a week or 2 weeks before it was teased on TV. So the maybe couple 100,000 people, I'm not sure, who watched that, they at least would know there was some kind of tease without a direct reference.
And I believe they would be preaching to the choir defined, because anybody that watches that program, they're there. They're in the pew already.
Pew.
Pew, pew. But anyway, so for the AEW World title, we had MJF against Twinkle Toes McFingerbang. And of course, this match was officially announced the previous Wednesday. And you made the point, Brian, regardless of what I or any other right-thinking human being thinks about Kenny, he is a big name in their universe, in their, well, solar system, maybe not galaxy, in their little world. He's a big name.
Cluster of stars.
I don't even think they're a cluster. Well, maybe they're a cluster, but not of stars. Nevertheless, and all that, they gave us an announcement 3 days ahead of time and put it on free television, not even on their A show, but on the B show that don't be too good anymore.
Against the World Series.
Oh, and that for the folks that watch the baseball, there's that. And for this match, I swear to God, Harpo came out. Of course, we're talking about our friend Kenny. Came out wearing pink boots and a pink feathered jacket with his hair in a top knot, and he looked like an artichoke having a gender reveal party. Does he have somebody make these outfits for him on purpose to look preposterous?
Maybe in Thailand. I'm not exactly sure.
Is he trying to do Seth Franklin freaking Rollins?
Well, you could argue he was doing the wacky stuff in a sense before Rollins, actually.
Well, true.
I will say, beyond, any jokes about what he's wearing or anything, he doesn't look very healthy right now. Maybe that's not the way to put it. He looks
the same way he always looked to me. He looks like he's not a smiling baby face, nor is he a fiery baby face. He's a confused looking baby face that then goes into pulling funny faces, as they say across the pond, in the later stages of his match, and bugs his eyes out a lot. Looks like the fucking Ultimate Warrior without the goddamn, fucking rest of his body. He's puffing and huffing, and then otherwise he's just got that hangdog expression that Harley had when she had her infection.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but he doesn't look as
spry,
as healthy. I don't know. Something just, maybe it's just me.
Well, the question of this match that I had in my mind was, is MJF good enough and smart enough to make Kenny look like a wrestler instead of a video game character? And the answer to that was going to hinge and depend on whether or not they had MJF's match or they had Kenny's match. And unfortunately, they started out having MJF's match and degenerated into Kenny's match. And MJF, when he's in there with a pro that understands the business and has had some experience in proper places instead of wrestling fucking blow up dolls and marital aids all the time, Danielson, Punk, he had classics with. MJF always has the match that's a wrestling match that is built on psychology, that makes sense from start to finish and takes people on a ride and gets emotion. And this was, at least it turned into, by the way before the end of it, it degenerated into a goddamn video game outlaw indie match that Kenny is a specialist in. And all it did was risk MJF's goddamn neck when he's their golden goose right now. And we can go through a few fucking specifics, but that's what I thought about the whole goddamn thing. It was ridiculous what they did in the timing of when they're doing it, or unless Tony's planning on buying his own private hospital. I don't know. Am I being cranky? Did you like it? You have a tendency to tolerate Kenny.
I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was one of the best Omega matches, and I didn't think it was one of the best MJF matches. I thought they worked fine together considering the constraints that were going to be there, which are Kenny works a specific way, and MJF would more than likely try to find a way to work with him to eventually get something out of that he wanted.
He was trying.
And, you know, I said it before, we were talking about the different guys that have been injured. Just about every single top guy in that company has gone down at least once, if not twice, except MJF. And you see a match like this, whether it's against Omega or anyone, because we've seen some of this kind of stuff before, whether it's him landing on his neck or landing on his knee or landing on his back, there's only so much more of that you can do before you're really going to feel it. And there was a lot of that in this match that made me uncomfortable. And it turned into an Omega match. I mean,
yeah.
And again, I like them more than you do, but it just, you know, you do your thing, I do my thing. They did the yay boo spot at the end. At least MJF was selling like he was wobbly legged.
Right.
So it worked, but it's
almost too much.
But they get to a point in these matches where it's not over, and it probably should be, because the fans get built up to a point where they're ready for it. There was one point in this match, I don't remember the specific example. It seemed like the fans were ready, and then it didn't happen as a finish. It's not that they booed or stopped watching. They kept watching. They stopped making noise. Like they were waiting for something else to happen now.
They get it right, and then they go too far. But that's the thing. It started out, it made sense. MJF was getting cheers with his eye poke and blah, blah, blah. And he even did a dive. And that made sense. But then here's my problem, not with MJF trying to do so much of Twinkle Toes' stuff, is that all of that shit that Kenny does is so contrived and awkward offense. It's not wrestling. It's not natural movements. It's running and drop kicking legs and turning his back on the guy and making a face and then running in another direction and swooping around. And it makes a worker like MJF have to stand there and wait. Kenny's timing is not good. It's timing for gymnastics, not wrestling. I don't know the difference because I don't know gymnastics. But he's either standing there and waiting or positioning himself to an obvious degree, because the guy can't do anything, just do it. He's got to run and gesticulate and hit the ropes and make movements. And it throws the timing of everything. MJF is the only one that's going to know whether I'm right or wrong, but that's my assessment from watching, is you can't get in a flow with him because he's always doing this awkward, weird shit.
You know what else hit me watching this? And I've said things about this in the past, but I don't know how much longer Omega's going to be able to do this. He looks like he's in a lot of pain, everything he does in the ring now. Nothing's coming easy. Not that it should look easy, but it looks like it's caught up with him bad.
Well, let's talk about They're having a match. MJF makes a little comeback. The biggest pop was on head biting and the kangaroo kick. But then Kenny stops him and he gets out of the ring and pulls out a table out from under the ring. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm thinking the best heel in the business is working as a comedic babyface, and the biggest douchebag in the business is now going to do furniture spots with him for no reason, out of nowhere. It's not a no DQ match. This is not a blood feud. For fuck's sake, the guy got poked in the eye, so his response is attempted murder. But then he sets the table up on the floor, and then they get in the ring and start having the match again. So what purpose did then they get back out and fight on the apron above the table so that everybody knows they're going to go through it here in a minute. And Kenny gives MJF the begonia suplex or the marigold suplex, a snapdragon, whatever, on the apron. But he took the brunt of it because it's landing on his own back of his head too. But then the referee stands there slack-jawed, gawking as they're on the apron for well over a minute, not counting. And then Kenny awkwardly gets him up because they can't maneuver on the apron and power bombs MJF off the apron, through the table, on his head, through to the floor. And then they sell that, and both of them are on the floor for the entire 90-second break that they took, as Tony Schiavone was pointing out. They've been out of the ring for almost 3 minutes by the time they come back, and they still weren't counted out. And the match wasn't stopped. And nobody's getting carried out on a stretcher. Because they were in commercial. Because it's fake. And they're stupid. And they still had 13 minutes on the air to wrestle after doing a hospitalization angle. And then they were doing the ridiculous twinkle toes, backwards hurricane ranas back and forth, again risking MJF's health for no reason, for no return. The ratings are going to be the same as they always are on this show. The house live was pathetic, and there were no pay-per-view buys, so they're just doing this for free. And they're going to let fucking Twinkle Toes hospitalize the Golden Goose. And then they would do the high-impact stuff where one would take a move and then get up 10 seconds later and then give the other something. And then it went so long, like you said, more. And then Kenny pranced and gesticulated and did the knee lifts and went for the one-winged fairy. And then Don Fallis comes out and distracts Kenny. And then they go back to the match. And Don tries to draw the referee, and the referee makes him leave. And they went back to the match. Don did nothing. And nobody won while Don was there. And then they do back and forth roll-ups. And MJF hits a heat seeker and gets a 2 count. And I wrote, what is this rotten finish? Don did nothing. What's going on? MJF goes for a Panama Sunrise. Kenny foils it and gets a 2 count. A 2 count was something. And then MJF tried it again and hit it, the Panama Sunrise, then the Heat Seeker, 1, 2, 3. So we now know that Kenny can't do a normal match, and you can't, even if you're one of the better workers in the business, do Kenny's match and make it come out palatable. And again, whether the power bomb through the table or whether a couple of these other goofy things that they were doing, again, now if they want to hurt MJF, he's the only one they got left. They might as well fold up for 6 months and rehab everybody at the same time. Your thoughts?
I kind of gave them earlier. I thought it was good, but it wasn't one of the better. Shouldn't say one of the better. It wasn't a top-tier MJF match. It wasn't a top-tier Omega match. But it was good. The fans there seemed to be into it. Me, I would have had it as the main event on something people would pay for.
Yeah.
You know, WWE, it's a little different because it's a subscription-based model right now for their premium live events. One of the few successes AEW has is pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And they're adding more. They just announced another one for the end of December. And they put this one on Collision against the World Series
Do you want to see this match again in a rematch now that we've seen it once?
No, they would have to tell some kind of interesting story to make me want to see this again.
Well, then in that case, that includes Kenny out.